I am so excited to introduce you to this week's Maven on the Mavens of Motherhood podcast, Coco Brown of Our Growing Abode. Coco Brown is a mom of two, creative and maternal wellness advocate online, spreading honest and inspirational words for mothers. I am so grateful that she is sharing her beautiful home birth story with us. She shares her journey into motherhood and her personal story and how she overcame miscarriage, loss, and grief to get pregnant with her daughter, Poet. How she healed her body and mind intentionally with small and big holistic lifestyle changes and received guided help along the way. She paints the picture of her home birth and takes us there into the depths of her journey as it is so fresh in her memory. She even faced shoulder dystocia during the birth of her daughter with grace, empowerment, and swift guidance from her midwife. This is an empowering and inspiring story, and I'm so freaking stoked for you to listen to it. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I'm so excited that you're here for today's interview with Coco. She is a new mama navigating postpartum, just a couple weeks postpartum, right after giving birth to her second baby. And she is here to share her birth story. And she's got two to share with us a little bit too. So I'm excited to hear from her and talk birth. And I want her to introduce herself. So Coco, can you tell us a little bit about you? Just what you're navigating right now.
Yes. I'm Coco. I am navigating the fresh waters of postpartum for the second time. Very different experience from the first. Just taking it super slow. And I think when you asked me like, oh, what do you do? Or, how do you like to be introduced? I always think of the moms that say, I'm just a mom every time, like in my head, because I'm focusing on motherhood. I'm focusing on, I am the regulator of my household. So I'm taking it slow and providing that space for my family and my children. And it's not a just because it's a lot, especially postpartum. So I am a mother and I'm focusing on motherhood, and that's me.
Mm-hmm. And I really see you as this creative being and this like artist that you share some of your art, whether it's just like your day-to-day life or your motherhood journey online.
Absolutely.
And it's been so fun to feel like I'm getting to know you.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. I think it's been a really wild experience to be so vulnerable online this past season. Like I would say for the last few years, I've kind of taken a bit of a turn and started sharing more words than just art and photos, and being creative is something that I've always done, and I've always been in a creative field for work as well. So, but just navigating like honesty in that and bringing in actual storytelling and words and sharing from my heart and sharing like where I'm at has been really amazing. And it's connected me with so many amazing moms, and this podcast, like, it's just been really awesome.
Well, it's amazing when we're vulnerable and when we put a little piece of us out there, what might we get in return? Like that's how I got connected with you, is reading your birth story on Instagram and how you curated these different parts with photos and just the story that you were telling, and that it was raw and real birth. And not often do you see that online where you get a vulnerable, raw birth story with photos. It was so beautiful. You brought me to tears.
Yeah, me too. I brought myself to tears. I think one thing that I really focused on when I was sharing that, story via text, writing it out, I really wanted to be aware of the parts that were hard, like transition, and the parts that I was fearful about maybe going into it, or that I had to work through. I feel like that's the part that's cut out of a lot of birth stories, or even like birth videos. Like they'll be like, then I got to transition, and the video cuts, and then all of a sudden they're pushing, and I'm like, I want to see them screaming. Like I want to see that rawness. I want to see the primal. And not all women do scream, or that type of thing. But I wanted to be honest about where every part, which is why it's 7 parts long in the written. Yeah, I really wanted it to be honest and raw and detailed.
I can hear sweet babe.
She does. She is constantly vocal. She's always like, oh, oh. I'm like, oh yeah.
Singer, maybe.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
What's her name?
Her name is Poet.
And
yeah, Poet Fleur.
Is there a story behind her name?
Yeah, kind of. I'll keep it short, but there is I actually, I was sitting on the beach. For those who don't know, between my 2 children, I had 3 miscarriages. The second miscarriage was the farthest along, and probably the hardest for me and emotionally. And I was sitting on the beach. It was my birthday, which is crazy. It was my birthday. I was sitting on the beach and I was reading a poetry book, and I had just found out that that I was miscarrying, and I didn't know it was a miscarriage. And I was just grieving and kind of giving it to the ocean and just being with Mother Earth. Like I just needed to ground my feet in the sand and just read poetry. And I'm reading this poetry book about flowers. And it was just like a really intensely emotional moment. And I remember just looking at the book and seeing, and it says poetry on it, and just thinking like how beautiful that name was. We knew that we wanted to name our daughter with a P, because my husband's mother's name started with a P and she's passed. So we wanted her to have the same initials. So yeah, that's how I found it. And I've had it since. And so exactly 2 years later, on my birthday, Poet was born, and I named her Poet. So that's the story.
Oh, that is so beautiful.
Yeah. It's really wild. It's really, really wild. So many dates, like in our whole kind of getting to Poet, like for Poet to get to Earth, like this, I call it like her journey here. There were a lot of dates that were matched up. One of them being my birthday, which she was born on my birthday. And and then same with like I had a miscarriage date, which was when I conceived Poet, and then her due date was when I lost a baby. Like it was just like weird. And I'm not really a numbers person or a dates person, but there was a lot of syncing there, which was cool.
Yeah, synchronicities.
Yes.
I almost feel like there's stories about this too, that like the baby's soul is the same soul coming into the world. When you have miscarriages, they're just waiting for the right time. And so those synchronicities are almost like signs that like that was Poet all along.
Right.
Wow. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to back up to one of the things that you mentioned just about you is that you feel like you're the regulator or the mother or like that figure in your home. Do you feel like you've come into that, or is that something that came naturally to you?
Ooh, that's such a good question. That's a really great question. I think honestly, growing up, my mother was. That's where I go immediately when I think about as early as learning, nervous system regulation. That was my mother. My mother was I think it is the mother, isn't it? Usually that is the regulator of the home, the keeper of the home, you know, the mother. Like, I think it's very common. So that's how I grew up. And I would say I came into it in motherhood more so than I had been prior, like as a maiden. However, in relationships, I've always been the regulator. So yeah, with my husband and my children and just the temperament of the home, everything, it sounds like it could be a negative thing because there's a lot of almost like this pressure, this weight on you to be perfect, but that's not what a regulator is. It's not perfect. It's being open to learning and like growing and shifting and yeah. So that's that's my role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how many
But
weeks postpartum are you?
oh, 4.
4
Freshly 4.
weeks.
Poet is 1 month today. Oh my gosh, I forgot. Yeah, she's 1 month
Yeah.
today. It's June 6th. She was born May 6th. Yeah, so I'm 1 month postpartum. Just
Wow.
wild. It has gone so quickly, so quickly.
And tell us about your first a little bit. Like, you
Oh
can
yeah.
even tell us about the birth story of your first, or just like your journey into motherhood that first time around before we get into Poet's birth.
Yeah, sure. So I had been dating my husband, who was not my husband at the time. I had been dating him for 1 year and we got pregnant. That's the story. Um, yeah, we got pregnant and I was shocked, like shocked. I was blown away. And it was a lot to take in. He was so happy, so excited. And I was not ready to make the trek from maiden to motherhood. I really wasn't. And so it was hard. It was really hard. I was really grateful. The pregnancy was great. He was great and I wasn't sick. It really I was really blessed. Like it was a great pregnancy. And we just decided to start our family. We weren't even living together. So we moved in together and yeah, that's how he came. My husband's, I think I've shared this on my Instagram, but my husband's father had passed away exactly 6 months prior. And I really feel like his sweet soul and my son's sweet soul came in to be there for my husband and just help him heal on his grieving journey. And so yeah, that was a a part of the story that I kind of didn't really realize until my son was born. Then I started realizing, like, wow, he has brought so much joy to my husband, who at the time could have just buried himself in grief, and rightfully so, to be honest. But he just held on, and my son was just there, and he was perfect, and he looked just like his dad, which was crazy, and he had big blue eyes like his dad, and yeah, it was really wild. So that's how he came to be, and that's his little story. His birth, I was very passionate about having a natural birth, unmedicated. I really wanted a home birth. We were living in a condo in LA in Silver Lake at the time. It just didn't feel like it was possible. I don't know why. I just remember thinking like it's not possible to do this here, to have a home birth here. I don't know. It was led by a lot of fear for sure. So I was very fearful in that pregnancy. I had an OB. She was pretty insistent on working with me and being there for the birth. She said my baby was going to be big, a tale as old as time. And I'm very petite. So yeah, it was fear led. And that's something that I really had to work through, his postpartum. So I did a hospital birth. It was a birth center that was connected to a hospital. And there was a big tub, and I was promised this like water birth, and it would be just like your bedroom, like all these promises. You could eat, you could snack, you could do all the things. And it wasn't. Ended up in the end, because my water breaking, I couldn't use the tub, and there was liability issues, and it was just so legal. There was a lot of legality attached to it, which is not what you want for your birth, which is not what I wanted for my birth, I should say. So, and I knew that I didn't feel comfortable in the hospital, which is why I chose this birth center that was attached to the hospital with like more of a bedroom feel type of room, because I just did not feel comfortable in the hospital. I had like emergency surgery when I was 15, and I've never felt good in a hospital. It's cold. The lighting's terrible. Some people, that's where they feel safe. Like they feel safe in a hospital, and that's amazing. And if that's where you feel safe, and if that's where you feel the most comfortable birthing your baby, you should absolutely do that. I personally did not. And my body definitely showed me that because my water broke at a restaurant. And I was in the car, I called my OB and I begged to go home. I was like, can I please go home just for a little bit? I want to take a shower. I want to take a bath. Like, I love water. I'm comfortable in the water. That's my go-to for pain relief, emotional release. Like, I am just a shower gal through and through. I just feel safe and comfortable. So I begged to go home, and she said, no, you have to come to the hospital because your water broke. I was super bummed, and I drove straight to the hospital. My contractions were 3 minutes apart. When I got to the hospital, they immediately stopped. Immediately. I was so nervous. I just was shaking. I don't know why. I was so scared. I just got so scared. So they ended up spreading back out to 15 minutes apart. Long story short, I got stuck at 7.5 centimeters. Every time I got checked, it was awful. Awful. It was so painful. And it was I just had not a good experience. I felt really poked and prodded at. I had all these machines. I remember having to pee, and I felt like I couldn't get up and go pee because I was attached to so much, and I kept having to bring that wheelie thing. And so I like skipped it. I was like, it's fine. I just won't pee. Well, ended up having like bladder issues during my pushing, and it was a whole ordeal. And it was the spiral that you hear about in a lot of hospital birth stories, of I didn't progress on their timeline. So they started pushing Pitocin. Well, I didn't have an epidural. The Pitocin, they just kept upping it every hour or so. Before I knew it, my contractions were just one contraction. I didn't have a break. It just was one. And I was freaking out. This was about 30 hours after I had gotten to the hospital. And I got to the hospital at 6 centimeters. So there's no reason that I should have been 30 hours there after getting there with 6 centimeters. But my body was completely shut down. It was so closed up. I just didn't feel comfortable. And I was filled with fear, from head to toe. So they wanted to push a C-section, and my husband begged. He was like, 1 more hour, please. Let's give her the spinal tap, and we can start preparing her for a C-section, but can you please just give her 1 more hour? And they agreed. So he was my advocate, which was amazing because we chose not to have a doula. And I regretted that. I really regretted that because I thought I was going to be able to express what I needed, but especially with the Pitocin, I couldn't even talk. I was like blacking out, coming to. It was just very intense. So yeah, and then within 20 minutes of getting the spinal tap, I was 10 centimeters, and she's like, "Okay, you can push." And I pushed him out in 30 minutes, and he was caught. He was stuck. He was twisted a bit, and his shoulder was stuck a little bit, and she had to help him out. But it was quick, and he was perfect. I, on the other hand, struggled. I had a fever. I had a bad reaction to the spinal tap. I was unwell. I was unwell. They ended up giving me some medication. They gave me like a shot in my arm, and it kind of like knocked me out a little bit. And I was really upset about that because I was not asked about taking anything else. And so that postpartum was really rough because I just felt stripped of my power. I felt powerless. I felt full of fear. I've always struggled with anxiety, and I felt like it really overcame me that day. A day that I wanted to feel the most powerful. I felt the least powerful and the weakest I've ever felt in my life. It was such a crazy feeling, just laying there after having him and just feeling like something was taken from me. I don't know. It really felt like that. I felt violated. It was really weird. And it was hard to navigate postpartum. So that was his birth story. And I did end up navigating it, and I did end up healing, and I did EMDR, and I really focused on all of the good and the gratefulness of him coming to us and how perfect he was. Even when he was born, he was just like perfect. It was so great. It just had a lot of challenges. I had breastfeeding challenges with him that I felt. Ultimately, it was a massive lack of support, to be honest, and not to put it on other people, but myself. And like, I didn't seek out the right support system. I didn't want to use a lactation consultant because I was afraid that I would spend all that money and then be disappointed, or I didn't want to, choose. I felt like I had already chosen so wrong with choosing my OB and these people that I had been let down by in the hospital and nurses. So I really struggled with that. And I had to really push through this pregnancy with Poet because I really didn't want anybody there. I don't want anybody there. I don't want anybody touching me. I just need to be by myself, because just to make sure that nobody was gonna take something from me or make a decision or, that type of thing. So I was very, very, very specific and intentional and intuitive with who I chose to be at my next birth. And I was dreaming of like a redemptive home birth when he was like 5 days old. Like, I was like, I'm ready to get pregnant. I need a redemptive story. Like, I know I can do this better, and it's not better or worse. It really is just different. They have very different birth stories. And yeah, so I won't drag on about that, but
no,
it was intense.
So there's so many things that I want to talk about, but I think what I want to focus on is what got you to that place. You talked about it being at 5 days and feeling like, I want to do it different. Mm-hmm. And then doing the work to heal from birth trauma. You talked about EMDR, which mm-hmm. for those that are not familiar, we won't go too in depth with that, but that's a really great resource that you can do with a therapist to heal from birth trauma. Mm-hmm. Did you also see a therapist, or what are some other things that helped you to cultivate this new way of approaching birth the second time around? Because within 3 years, that's pretty quick to then completely do something differently. Tell us a little bit now about what helped you to get to that point, to feel like there's another way to birth.
I think ultimately both my husband and I, which is so funny, he was so on board because somebody told us to watch The Business of Being Born. And when we watched that after he had seen it for the first time after my son was born. We were planning on getting pregnant. My son was 13 months or something like that, 14 months. And we had decided, okay, we're ready for number two. And I wanted him to watch it. I had seen it and I wanted him to watch it. I kind of felt like he would be, if he went into it naively, just not knowing anything, he wouldn't be supportive of my home birth, which is totally valid, by the way. If you know nothing about birth and the history of birth and midwifery and all the past women who have done this before, like if you know nothing, it does seem scary. And if all you know is Western medicine, it's definitely scary. So I wanted him to watch that. So he watched it and he was like, oh, that's your story. Like, that's your story. You went in, they pushed the Pitocin, you ended up having to get the spinal tap, and then you didn't, they pushed all these things and then you didn't get the birth you wanted. And it lasted way longer and it stalled, and it probably wouldn't have stalled if we went home, I bet. And, he was like so passionate. So that was really amazing that he saw that and he was like so for the home. He was like, no way, we're doing it at home next time. Like, I feel like, and he was super supportive. It was really amazing to see like him believe in me when I would believe in myself one day and then the next day be like, oh, can I do this? I don't know. Especially being told like, you have big babies, like you have really big babies. You're like, oh shoot, like, can I push this baby out? Like, I don't, it's just, there's so much to process and think about when you're preparing for your birth. And I wanted to actually think about it. I felt with my son, I didn't think twice. Like I was just kind of like, I don't want medication, and let's just, I just kind of followed suit, and I didn't take control of a lot of the things that I felt like I could have. So that was amazing. So he's like, you could totally do it. And he felt strongly. He was like, I was in the car with you. Those contractions were coming on strong. I was feeling him come down, and he was there. He saw when I got to the hospital, just everything stalled, everything stopped. I was scared, and the body will do that. We hear these stories all the time, especially with animals, that when they're in danger, if they're giving birth, they can stop giving birth and run away and go find somewhere safe and then resume their labor. That's crazy. And my body did that. It was like waiting for me to go somewhere safe. It was so crazy. Just because I felt fear. I'm not saying that, that environment isn't safe, by the way. I'm just saying I did not feel comfortable in that environment. So in preparation for my next pregnancy, it's layered because I did a lot of mental prep prior to getting pregnant the second time. However, when I started miscarrying, I really dove into the physical aspect of preparing. So I chose my birth team pretty much immediately after I had my son, because I had already had a relationship with my midwife. I just chose not to use her for my first birth. However, I had a relationship with her. So I contacted her and I just said, can we talk about this? This is what I'm thinking about doing. I'm really passionate. We met and I just knew it was definitely an intuitive thing with her. We spent a good hour talking and kind of consulting, if you will. That's probably like the professional terminology, but we just checked to see, where we were aligned. And there was a great alignment, and I felt in my gut, in my heart, in my soul, in my mind, that it was the right choice to choose her as my midwife. So that's how I chose my team. So I had my team right away. I pretty much knew that I didn't want to do it home because of my relationship with my midwife. And I kind of knew that I would get the support that I needed from her. And I didn't feel like I needed another energy in the home. I'm very sensitive to energy, and I didn't have the capacity to try and build a relationship with someone else that I didn't know, to come into the home and like anticipate my needs. And I think doulas are absolutely amazing. It was something that I didn't feel an alignment with. So I chose not to have a doula. So there we had it. I was like, okay, it's me and my husband. And then I thought about potentially having friends. In the end, decided not to. Once I was pregnant, it became very clear to me in my mental preparation, my emotional preparation, that I wanted to be alone, by myself through all of my laboring. And I'm glad that I did. And I'm glad that I followed that, I should say. So mentally, I did do therapy. I did some birth trauma therapy. I did fear release therapy. I did a lot of that. I worked with a hypnotherapist, and we worked on fear release, fear about the miscarriages. I had a lot of fear this pregnancy with Poet after losing 3 babies. So we worked through that a lot, worked through kind of a little bit of my son's birth, but I knew that I was choosing a completely different route. So I didn't have a whole lot of fear I wasn't really thinking about a transfer or hospital. I would say my husband was probably more on that boat. Like, he had to kind of work through like the what ifs, like, okay, well, what if we go to hospital? Are they just going to pump her up again with this and that? Like, he had to work through that with my midwife, and they just worked together on that. I was more fearful about losing her. And I was fearful about the intensity, because it was so intense, especially on the Pitocin. And people told me it's going to be very different. Not that it's not intense, but it's just a very different sensation when you have fake oxytocin running through your body, and it's unable to break that blood-brain barrier, which, if it can't break that barrier, then it doesn't tell your body to then release its natural kind of pain reliever in between contractions, which I'm sure you know. But I was like, what? I was blown away by all of this information. So working through that was great, because I just, became more knowledgeable. I did a lot of research. I watched a lot of birth videos. I read a lot of birth stories and birth podcasts, and I highly recommend doing that and just filling my tank of positivity, these positive stories, especially positive ones that maybe didn't go perfectly, or you didn't think went perfectly, or had what might be as a complication, and being able to work through that, which I ended up having. So I'm really glad that that I pushed for that and did that in my time preparing for my birth. Physically, I honestly can go on and on. I had to change a lot of things because of the miscarriages. My body was just not in optimal wellness. Like, my thyroid was tanked. My adrenals were shot. I was living a very go, fast pace, a lot on my plate, not sleeping, not eating enough, not eating enough by far, not eating the right things, all the things. I shifted everything. That's why I would need a whole nother podcast to go into like how I healed my body naturally from my last miscarriage to getting pregnant with Poet, because it took a full year to focus solely on physical, like acupuncture, chiro, naturopath, supplements. Changed my lifestyle. I changed my everything. I changed my job. We moved, like my whole life changed. So, and I needed that. It was kind of one of those situations after my 3rd miscarriage where it was like the snake under the rug. If you saw a bump in the rug, you're just going to hit every bump, like, and try and get the snake, because I wasn't sure where it was really coming from. So I just did everything to focus on wellness and just a full overall mental, emotional, soul body wellness. And I did that, and I'm really proud of myself. Again, another podcast, because that's a whole thing. It was, that was a journey in itself for sure. So that's a big part of our fertility story, you know? So then when I got pregnant with Poet, had to work through just a lot of fear of loss. That was mostly what I worked through during my pregnancy. I was ready for the birth. I felt like I had done a lot of preparation for the birth and knew what I wanted. Like, I'd been dreaming of this. I mean, it was 3 years when I got pregnant, and 3.5 years when I had her after my son. So I really knew what I wanted, and I stuck to my guns. That is what I really feel passionate about, is everything that I wanted. I manifested it. I spoke it out loud. Like, I told my birth story. I have a recording. I told my birth story from start to finish, from wake up to her in my arms. And I listened to it and said it out loud and thought about it every night before I went to bed. I was like, this is happening. This is happening. I won't take no. I'm having her at home. I'm not going to be scared. I'm going to get through the intensity and all the waves. And I'm pushing this baby out in my bedroom in a pool, like I wanted to. And I believed it. I was like, I believe this is happening. I'm not going to not believe this. So I think that was huge. I really do.
I believe in manifestation, especially around birth. Like, the power of your mind is so, I mean, there's tons of research on this now too. Like real scientific research about if you believe something to be true. They did it with like pain medication or different medications for healing. Like, if people believe that it will work regardless of if it was placebo or not. It's so insane. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So I want to record that podcast too. That second one that you're talking about. Like, yes.
I kind of don't know what to do with all the information. I think I'm just so like fiery and passionate because it took me so long. Like, just so many tests and trial and error and research and all these things. So then when I found out kind of like where I was going and nutritionally and all the things, now I'm like, I want to shout it from the rooftops, like, don't make the same mistake that I did. Don't live on lettuce and coffee. You're going to kill your thyroid and then you won't have babies. Like, I'm just like, so like, I'm just one of those things where I think it happens when you become a parent. It's that thing that your parents did when you were young where they're like, don't do that. And you're like, I have to learn on my own. But now that I'm a parent, I'm like, don't do this.
Yeah. Like, when my postpartum depression was at its peak, I was not eating anything but coffee until about like 11 a.m. or something. I would get so busy
my gosh,
mothering and like just go
fasting.
go.
I'm like, oh my god.
And I was just drinking coffee, and of course I had anxiety. Like, of course I was having those symptoms, like
heart palpitations. You're like, I feel like I'm dying, but I don't know what it is. I can't imagine. I haven't eaten in 2 days and I live on coffee and I haven't slept. And that was seriously me though. Like, I was like, and I went to my acupuncturist and I said, I don't know what's wrong with my body. And she said, no, absolutely nothing is wrong with your body. It's the way that you're treating it. And it's the way, and talking about it. I remember I kept saying like, what's wrong with me? I was really upset with myself after my third miscarriage because that's what we do. We blame ourselves, women. Something else that I'm super passionate about talking about is miscarriage and healing from it and processing it. And it's really intense. Again, another podcast for that. But I took a lot of that on, and my womb doesn't work and my body doesn't work and it's all my fault, and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, if you keep speaking these things, they're going to be true. Your cells are listening. And I just was like, mind blown. So she's like, every day I want you to say, my cells are working. My cells are working. My cells are healthy. My blood is healthy. Like, and say these positive affirmations about my body and write them down and put them in my house and all these things. And I just remember at the time being like, ooh, woo woo. And then like, here I am, 2 years later. And I'm like, everybody write everything on a Post-it, put it up, whatever you want, whatever you need. And don't say bad things about yourself because your cells are listening.
Yes.
So that was really, that made like a big impact on me, which is kind of funny.
Let's share your proof now of how you manifested your birth, because you spoke it into existence, and you're living proof of that manifestation now.
Yes. I'm blown away by it. I really am.
It's amazing, right? It's
I'm like,
of course,
this is exactly what I wanted, and it happened. Like, I'm kind of still in shock about it.
Well, it's still pretty fresh. And I think that's why it's so exciting that you're here to share it right now when it's fresh in your mind and in your body. How did it start? Take us to like the day before, the day, I don't know.
Yeah, I had a lot of like predominal labor. Is that how you say it? I had a lot of like pre-labor. I felt like I was in labor for like 3 weeks, which makes sense with her size now that I know. She was just really working her way down. My body was really preparing for those contractions to get her out. And so I called my midwife and I was like, okay, I need to help her. Like, I don't think I can wait anymore. I was late. I think I was about 8 days late at this point ish. I was trying very hard not to focus on any dates, but I could tell that she was big. My belly was very big and I was very heavy, and I had been measuring 40 for a few weeks now. So, I called her and she said, okay, well, maybe Monday we'll make a plan. And this was Friday night. And so I said, okay, we had a really good conversation. And then that night I sent my son with my parents and I was like, I just need some space. The next day was my birthday. So I felt like I could do that. I was like, you guys can take him. I just want my birthday, just me and my husband, and just have a nice day. And I'm dropping the like trying, the nipple stimulation and the blood, all the things that we were kind of doing. I'm just going to drop all that and just enjoy my day. It's my birthday. So that night at like 9:30, my Braxton Hicks that I was having for weeks just totally upped and just got more intense. And I was like, that's weird. And I started shaking. And that's really indicative for me. I had the same with my son, just hormone shifts, just, make you shaky. So I started getting really shaky. And I was like, oh, I think I'm in labor. So I called my midwife. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm in labor. I really don't want to be, because I did not want to labor intensely. And I did not want to have her at night. I'm not a night person. I'm a morning person. It was like probably the biggest part of my manifestation. I was like, you can come late, you can be big, you can all these things. I want you at home and I want you during the day. Like, I have to have light out. And it might be because my son was born at night. He was born at almost midnight. And then it was like me at 3 a.m. by myself, husband's asleep on the cot, nurses are coming in and out. Like, it was just like very not for me. I'm not a night person. And then to have all that kind of intensity and action and loneliness, like being lonely in the hospital, I just remember feeling like horrible. So I really wanted her during the day. So I was like, I am going to try and take control of this. You can't really, but I took a bath and I just kind of slowed down and I slowed my breathing down and I went to bed. And I went to bed and I slept on and off for like maybe 4 to 6 hours. I just kind of had contractions through the night. They weren't painful. They were just pressure. And I was excited. I was really excited. And then the next morning, they were about the same. And so I was like, I don't know if I'm having a baby today. They just were all over the place. The intensity was there, but the timing was so weird. Like they were 15 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So I was like, I don't know what's happening. I know I'm in labor. I just don't know where I'm at, you know, how I'm progressing. So, and I didn't focus on it. I just was going with the flow. So that's how it started.
Very similar to me. I gave birth to my first the day after my birthday. So I laid like all day on my birthday. And it ended up being like perfect. I feel like that's what kind of like started it for me, because I had all these fun things planned. So it was like oxytocin like flowing. I went to yoga, I got a massage. I just like kept going.
Yeah.
My day.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me.
Yeah, I kind of was like that too. I was like, it's my birthday. I'm just gonna like do what I want. Yeah, I took it really easy. I took it easy in the morning. I knew that I was in labor, so I did, you know, I focused on rest. I focused on eating. I ate breakfast. I was kind of chatting with my midwife in the morning and just telling her like, hey, this is where I'm at. She's like, eat breakfast, go about your day. I'm like, that's exactly what I'm doing. So, and then just, you know, keep me posted. So I ate, we went on a walk. It was a really beautiful day. The sun was out, which it like hasn't been since. So I'm like grateful that that was part of what I manifested, was that the sun would be out, that it would be a sunny day. And yeah, I was trying to keep it going. I did like the mile circuit. I really wanted to, I just didn't want to stall. I wasn't like really trying to force anything. I wasn't doing anything intense, but I just wanted to keep moving. And I also felt like moving. They were getting intense. So I just like really needed to move around the house. And I was in different rooms at different times. I was in the kitchen and doing some squats, and then I was in the living room and I laid down on the couch, and then I was on the ball in the living room and just moving around. I really loved that. I needed a change of scenery. Always brings me back to my first birth, because you're always going to kind of compare in a way to your own experiences, you know. But I would kind of get like fidgety or anxious or start to just kind of get this icky feeling, and I would just immediately go outside. Like I went outside and went on a walk, or just switching it up really helped. So that was really great. And I was taking naps. Like I took a couple naps. That was great. Slept for like 30 minutes and got my rest. And I tried just to be incredibly intuitive. If I felt tired, I laid down. If I was hungry, I ate. If I wanted a popsicle, I ate a popsicle. Like I just was kind of really trying to follow what my body wanted and what it was telling me. And just I focused solely on her and was really trying to connect with her throughout the day. Completely forgot it was my birthday, by the way. Also, so did my husband, so that's fine. I was like, where's my birthday present? Where's my card? He's like, you've been like in labor for a week. I'm like, it's totally fine. And so, yeah, we were really excited. I was in and out of the shower a lot, on the toilet a lot, which if you've given birth, that's probably part of your story too. Just using the bathroom, which can we just talk about like in home birth, just getting to even just use your own toilet? Like it's so nice to just be able to, I'm like toilet, shower, bath, toilet, shower, bath. I kind of like when things got closer together and more intense, I was just alternating between the three, like a little circuit. That was great. So then I got really tired. I got super tired. Didn't know how far along I was. And I sent a picture of my butt crack to my midwife to show her the purple line. I'm like, how far along am I? Because you know that your butt creates that line that can tell you like how about how dilated you are. So she's like, I think you're like 5.5 centimeters. Also, thanks for sending me a picture of your butt crack. So that was it was great. It was great. I had like a great sense of humor. I just felt comfortable. I felt excited. Things were getting more intense. The same thing happened with my son where I tend to jump, like I'm doing okay. And then I just go into transition and it's like 0 to 100. And I'm like, oh, I didn't have that with him either. Anything gradual. It's like I hit 8 centimeters and then my body's just like full force, 30 seconds apart, contract, like just going ham to get to those last couple centimeters. So that's what happened. I lay down on my bed and then I just felt a massive pop, like a drop. And same thing happened with my son. And so I knew, luckily, I knew this time. With him, I was like, something's wrong. But with her, I knew what it was. So I just ran to the shower and my water hadn't broken yet. So I was like, oh, maybe it was my water. And I couldn't really tell because I was in the shower. So I labored in the shower and that's where I transitioned. And I was the most scared of transition going into it. I transitioned with my son was just really intense. I was very shaky. I threw up. Like it was just really a lot. Like it was a lot happens in that time. Your body is going through so much and you're just trying to keep up. And for me, this time I wasn't trying to keep up. I just was like, I'm out. Like mentally, I was like, you do you, body. Like I trust you. So I just let my body go. I didn't try to make sense of anything or to even stay connected really. Like I was just like, okay, I'm gonna go out here and like watch myself do this so that I can just have the memory of it rather than the like quote unquote trauma that it could cause because of whatever, the intensity, the pain. It's intense. It is. It's really intense. And with a big baby, it was really intense. But yeah, I just exited. I kindly exited myself and just let my body do its thing. I found a focal point, which a friend told me to do. She's like, when you're in transition, find a focal point and just focus on it and just breathe and just like imagine that you're not there and your body is just like doing this magical thing. I'm like, okay. So that's what I did. And it fully worked. My midwife walked in the bathroom door and I was like, can I get in the pool? I feel like I'm pushing. Like my body was just like, I could tell that I had made it through transition. And I was so excited. And it was like an hour. So good. So good. I really felt like being fearless in that moment really helped my body just open. I just let it go. And I would say, if there was one little like tip I would ever give someone who's going through transition, I would just let it go. Let it go. Don't fight it. Don't hold on. Don't clench. Like I just was like, and I sounded like my husband recorded it. And so he's like, you sound like like some sort of singer or something. Cause I was like, just like staying in some sort of rhythm, or I just needed, I don't know. You do the craziest, funniest things in labor when you let yourself go.
Yes.
It was amazing.
You let yourself go.
I did. I mean, if that wasn't even, I thought I was like being kind of crazy during transition and in there. And then I got in the pool to push and I was like, oh, like I am alive right now. Like I got in the pool, which felt amazing. The pool was awesome. It felt so good. And then another midwife that I'm close to, that Lindsay, my midwife, like works alongside, she showed up and I had fully manifested that. I was so blown away because usually Lindsay would have like an assistant or a training midwife, a midwife in training. And she just came by herself. And so I was like, oh, interesting. But she knew I didn't really want anybody there. And then when Ashley, the other midwife, came in, it was like, this is what I wanted. I just wanted those two. Like I knew that I was just in really good hands with them. So yeah, no cervical checks, no nothing. They showed up. Literally, I was 10 centimeters, got in the pool, was ready to push, and immediately started pushing, I was really passionate about trying to breathe my baby out. Like I was like trying not to push because I wanted to like breathe her out. And that's the only part of my manifestation that shifted a bit, but I also didn't know how big she was. Are you going to be mad? You need food. So, yeah, I just was like, and I told my mom I wanted to breathe her out, but my body, I feel like I need like I need to like actually help. Like I need to like really push. And she was like, just follow, she's always guiding you back to your intuition, to your power, to your strength, which is quite the opposite of my last experience. And so everything was up to me. Like she was always just guiding me back to myself. I said in a post recently, she's just a mirror. The best thing she ever did was just show me a mirror of truth and who I really am and the power I really have. And when I looked at her for guidance, it was like she just immediately would kind of put this mirror back up, like look back to yourself. You know what to do. Your body knows what to do, and follow that intuition. So I did. So then I just started like going ham, like just growling and roaring to get her out. And it was so intense. And then I would be like off right away when a contraction would end. I felt amazing. Like I would eat frozen fruit, and I was laughing and smiling and excited to meet her. It was amazing. It was the best. It really was. And then her head came out, and my husband's like ready to catch her. And it was so amazing. I'm going to need a snack for this last part. I need to eat if you're going to be telling my story.
I love that you mentioned that you felt like you had a break, and that during that you were eating frozen fruit and you felt that's so much different than your first experience.
Like night and day, truly.
Did the intensity ever feel undoable?
Yes. I want to say no in like my memory of this like beautiful time, but I know for a fact that there were a few moments where I looked straight at Lindsay or Ashley and was like, I don't know if I don't know if I can do this. It was just really, when she started coming out, it was very intense. And I had said to one of them, whoa, like her shoulders are so broad. And I'd mentioned that she had broad shoulders. Like I could feel her shoulders coming through, and it was just really intense. And that was the moment that I kind of knew, like, this is going to be hard. Like, this is not, because with my son, I pushed him out in 30 minutes. I had already been pushing for over an hour with Poet at this point. So I was like, oh crap, like this is like, she's giving me a run for my money. I was working out. I was pushing with everything in my soul. Like it was just so deep, so deep. I went to that place for sure. And yeah, and I know I said at one point, I'm not sure if I'm doing this. And then in between contractions, I would kind of say like, am I doing this okay? I just felt like I couldn't, at one point I felt uncomfortable. Like I couldn't find the position I wanted to push her out in because of her shoulders. Like everything kind of felt something was off. Like I could just tell I needed to change positions, but I wasn't finding one that worked. I was like going on my back, going on my knees, going sideways. Like I could feel her head. At one point, I even said to Lindsay, like, I think I have a cervical lip or something. Like something's stopping her from coming out. There's no way I'm pushing this hard for this long. And she's like, still not here. And that was the only time that she checked for something. And she was like, nope, her head's right there. You don't have a cervical. So, and I'm like, yeah, like her head was just right there. So intuitively, Lindsay obviously knew what was happening. she never told me anything. There was no point in telling me. I would have just kind of like maybe a little bit anxious, or especially not having any knowledge or information about how her positioning was, or like how she was stuck. So I pushed her head out, and Janie's there ready to catch her. And I was so proud of myself for pushing her head out, because, that was intense. It's so short, but that was definitely intense. And her head came out, and she turtled really intensely. So her whole head came out, and then she just went right back, like got kind of sucked back in. And within a matter of half a second after I got her head out, my midwife, Lindsay, jumps in the pool. Jumps in. She jumps in the pool. I'm like, what's happening? Everything's so intense. And she just grabs, like, she just puts her hands in and just starts like twisting the baby and like pulling. And I can just feel this pulling. And she is telling me like, I need to push. She's like, and I don't have a contraction at this point. I have no contractions. So I'm like, like, how do I'm trying to push, but it is kind of hard without having a contraction. She jumps in the pool. She's playing. She told Ashley to push on my stomach from the other side. So she's pushing my stomach down and pushing the baby. And Lindsay's pulling and kind of like unhooking. I didn't know what was happening, but she was unhooking her shoulder. Her shoulder had gotten stuck behind my pelvic bone. So she had to go in and unhook her shoulder. So she unhooks her shoulder. She's pulling, and she just tells me to just like go there. Are you okay? Yeah. Are you okay? You just really want to say something on this podcast, don't you? Are you telling your story? Are you telling your story? She does like to tell her story. She likes to tell her birth story to me every night at 7 p.m. She was born at 7 p.m. Aww. So the sun is setting.
She's so sweet. I can't.
Are you wet? Are you mad because you're wet? You are wet. Do I have time to change her really quick? Mm-hmm. Both midwives are now involved. They are help guiding this girl out. So they are helping guide her to Earth. She's doing great. I'm doing great, but we just needed some extra hands, some extra loving hands. And so that was great. So then she pulls her out and hands her to me. And she was like fully purple, a lot of pressure, very swollen. And so, she's like, just talk to her. She's doing great. She had her hands on her heart. So she's like, she's doing good. Heart's beating. She needs to come into her body a little bit. That was really intense. And I was just in the pool, and I didn't put any flowers in, but some of the flowers had like fallen into the pool that were up from the top. And it was really beautiful. It was, I told my midwife, like, whoa, I really went there in the end. Like, I thought I went there in transition. Then I thought I went there when I got her head out. But then that last 3 minutes, I was like.
So I love how all of this intensity for us is happening in the most intense part of your story.
She knows, she hears me.
She's like,
she's like, you're telling that part? That's so intense. I've actually been working with a cranial sacral therapist for her for just like those last 3 minutes. And she has some shoulder like issues, and she's really tense, and she just has like really typical baby signs from having shoulder dystocia. So she ended up having shoulder dystocia, which I didn't know what that was at all prior to having it. And So she was totally great. She came out, she was great. She latched in like a minute. I wanted to do the breast crawl on my bed, but she was not having it. She was like, no, we're gonna nurse right here in the pool. I'm ready. Also, when she came out, everybody in the room was like, oh, okay, that explains a lot, because she was massive. She looked about 12 pounds. She was 10'2", but she was swollen as well. So she looked massive. Like, she looked so big. My midwife was like, there's no way she's under 12 pounds. We like all had to take bets before we weighed her, because we were just like astounded that that was in me, like was in my body.
Wait, how much did she weigh?
She was 10'2".
Okay.
So she was 10'2". But she looked bigger. She was almost 23 inches. She was a big baby. So what had happened, then they measured her shoulders and her chest, and I believe they were just over 16 inches, 16 or 17 inches, which is big. So that's why her shoulder got stuck, because she was very broad. And then she got stuck at her chest as well. So she got stuck at her eyes, then she got stuck at her shoulders, and then she got stuck here at her chest, because her chest was the same width as her shoulders. So usually babies just like slide out, and she was like, nope. So they had to like pull her out from her body as well. It was great. And we were both great. We were both happy and healthy, and I got to just be in my bed. I think one of the best parts of home birth is just being there, right after, and just being in your own bed and eating your own food. And my midwives both stayed for a couple hours after, and we just kind of like processed a little bit of the birth together. And I don't know, it was really amazing. My mom came just after I had her. I really wanted it to just be my husband and I this time. My mom was at my first birth. And I just knew, I don't know. I just knew what I needed. And it was really, really beautiful. Really, really beautiful. I can't stop talking about it. You guys, despite shoulder dystocia and having like a massive baby, I still am like, it was so perfect. Life comes with challenges, life, that's life. It's nothing went wrong. There's no trauma there. Like, we all have obstacles we face, and that was one of mine. But I had the right team for it, and everything was set up to succeed and be what I needed it to be. And it was amazing. So, and that was it. And it was sunset. So the sun was like, it was just before 7 p.m. and the sun was just about to set, and it was like golden hour. And I didn't have that time where, after you have your baby and you're just like kind of in this weird vortex of whatever, just you don't know what time it is. But I didn't really have that, which was really great.
One of my last questions is what was your son doing?
He was with my parents.
Okay.
Yeah. I did not, I chose not to have him at the birth for a few reasons, but mainly because of our relationship. I kept like going into labor. I kept like having contractions. And then as soon as I would start mothering him, they would stop, or they would get longer. I was a little bit worried. One of the reasons why I was worried that I might go into labor at night was because it just was the only time that I wasn't in like mommy mode for him. You know what I mean? And I personally couldn't break out of that. And I knew I needed to be full blown 100% focused on this birth. And I'm glad that I did, because I did, especially in the end. I really did need to be primal and focused. And I don't know that I think it would have been great for him to be there for him. I don't know that it would have been the best choice for me. And I felt that. And so I just followed that intuition. And so he was with my parents, and that was really great. And I think that's partly why my labor progressed so well on my birthday, was just because I didn't have him. I could just solely focus. He's also like incredibly chatty. I love him so much, and I love his chats, but he is like, he wouldn't just like sit there and like watch me labor. Like he is like, okay, so this is very chatty, and I love it. But it was a good thing. He came just the very next day.
That was one of my feelings as well. And one of my biggest fears with home birth was just like, what are my kids going to be doing? Like, are they going to be asking me for snacks? Are they going, I'm like, I need to like focus.
The like yelling mom, like, mommy, can you pull up my pants? I went potty. I'm like, I can't be doing that in labor. And I needed my husband too. I didn't have a doula or anything like that. So I needed my husband, and he would have been taking care of him.
And for our listeners, an option is to hire a birth doula that's also a sibling doula. So like they could be in the home with the sibling doula. And then if they're sleeping, that doula could then support you. So that's another option too, if you don't have family.
We're
children at your home birth.
Yes, we're very fortunate that we have my parents. They're about an hour away. So that's really fortunate. Otherwise, absolutely, I would have probably hired someone or had a friend come and take him or watch him. But that's really cool. I didn't know that they had specific doulas for that. It's amazing.
For those that are maybe listening that want to have a home birth someday or feel like it's calling to them, what's your like send off to them, or what's your wishes to those that are still listening, that are kind of right in that cusp before maybe they give birth or are considering home birth?
I would say, I feel like the biggest part of my entire experience was just really, really going deep into that intuition, right? Like really asking yourself the hard questions of, where do I feel safe truly, not what I've been told, or and digging really deep into that feminine intuition, that maternal intuition of all the women who have done it before you. Like I found so much encouragement and peace about birthing from looking at all the other women that have done it, and it's not a comparison thing. It's just this kind of this tribe, we're a tribe of people who bring humans to earth from our bodies, from water to land. Like it's really amazing. And you are amazing. You are an incredibly magical unicorn being that can absolutely do this. And there were times, a couple times where I texted my midwife and I just said, like, I can do this, right? And she was like, 1,000,000% you can. There was no doubt in my support team's minds, and therefore it really helped me kind of shift out of that mindset anytime I felt doubt or fear. And those feelings are completely natural. So when they pop up, explore them. Be curious. It's okay to be curious about your doubts, about your fears. Just don't let them lead you. I feel very led by my feelings in my first pregnancy and birth. And this time I just explored them. I was curious about what I was feeling and working through it with another woman who's encouraging of your home birth or maybe has had one is a great place to be too. And just and if you don't have what you need, find it, get it. Find someone, ask around, we have to be in this together. I could not have done this without the support of other women. I just couldn't have, whether that be my acupuncturist or my midwife or my mother, being supportive of my home birth or whatever. So, ultimately, you can do this. You absolutely can. So follow that intuition.
Thank you so much, Coco. What an inspiration you've been. And
thanks.
You've been able to even show me how much resilience you have and grounding energy you have and the ability to regulate through challenging moments.
Like I'm doing right now.
We need more mothers like you in the world, mothering mothers. Truly sharing that message. So thank you so much. And
absolutely. And reach out to me if you, link my Instagram or my email. And, if you're listening to this and you want to bounce off of someone, please contact me. I would love to encourage you. Would love to.
Yeah, I will add Coco's Instagram in the show notes, and our blog post will share beautiful images of her birth and her birth story.
Yes.
And all of that.
I get my photos this week, actually.
Okay.
The ones that I have are all filmed, but I get my real photos this week. So maybe I'll send you some.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for having this podcast. So needed.